Nathan Hale's world ended with a crumpled hotel receipt. It wasn't the champagne or the 2 bathrobes that broke him. It was the date, Tuesday, the night Celeste kissed him on the cheek, smiled softly, and told him she was working late for their future. Nathan sat alone on the edge of their marriage bed, staring at the slip of paper, the silence around him thick as wet concrete. For a moment, he felt his chest cave, not with rage, but with something colder, the realization that the woman he loved had been living a double life under his roof. 14 years, a daughter, a family name built on sacrifice, all reduced to a room service bill and a lie. That was the night Nathan Hale stopped being the man who built empires and became the man ready to dismantle one, hers. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. The moment Nathan Hale's fingers brushed against the folded slip of paper inside Celeste's Chanel coat, he knew, though a part of him had known for weeks, maybe longer. He'd gone looking for a tissue, some small kindness in the midst of Celeste's breathless complaints about spring allergies. Instead, his fingers pulled free a thin, crumpled receipt, warm from the lining of her pocket. The Baccarat Hotel. Suite 1703, 2 bathrobes. Champagne. Caviar. Tuesday night. Nathan sat down hard on the edge of their bed, feeling the weight of it all, not the paper itself, but what it represented. Tuesday night. That detail lodged itself in his brain like a splinter under skin. Tuesday, the night Celeste came home late with a plastic bag of takeout and a tired smile, mumbling something about finalizing boutique deals and influencer meetings. Tuesday, when Sophie, their 6-year-old daughter, had asked why Mommy couldn't come read her a bedtime story, and Nathan, ever the rational, ever the patient, had assured her Mommy was working hard for all of them. For their future. That was the moment Nathan realized he had been living in a house of cards, and Celeste, the woman he had loved and built a life with, had been steadily pulling at its foundation, piece by piece, right under his nose. He should have felt rage, he told himself. He should have felt his chest blaze hot with fury, should have stormed into the kitchen where Celeste was probably sipping her post-work Pinot Grigio, phone glowing with whatever text thread she was pretending was work. He should have confronted her, shouted, demanded, broken things, maybe. That's what people do in situations like this, isn't it? But Nathan Hale had built his empire, his life, his legacy, on precision, on strategy. He didn't make rash decisions in the boardroom, and he sure as hell wasn't about to start in his bedroom. He stared at the receipt until the numbers blurred. 14 years of marriage, a daughter, a family name he had shielded like a fortress, and it all came down to this small, thermal-printed proof of betrayal. Quietly, deliberately, Nathan reached for his phone. He scrolled through his contacts, eyes steady, movements calm. He found the name. Luca Serrano, private investigator. Ex-FBI, discreet, used to working for Manhattan's elite, people who wanted problems solved without headlines. He pressed call. Luca, it's Nathan Hale. I need to hire you. There was a pause on the other end, just long enough to signal understanding. Full scope? Luca asked. Full scope, Nathan confirmed, voice cold now. I want to know everything. When Nathan ended the call, the house was still. He could hear the faint murmur of Celeste's voice downstairs, probably on speakerphone with one of her boutique partners, laughter light, a little too bright. He could picture her in the kitchen, glass of wine in hand, looking every inch the loving, successful wife, her designer heels kicked off by the counter, the faint trace of her floral perfume hanging in the air. For a second, just a second, Nathan's throat tightened. He could still remember the first time he met her, that electric rush of attraction, the feeling like gravity itself had shifted. They had built a life together, hadn't they? Fought for their dreams. Raised Sophie, worried about school applications, late-night ear infections, first steps. But beneath that flicker of grief, something colder settled in. She had lied to him. Not just with her body, but with her time, her words, her laughter. She had kissed Sophie goodnight and gone to meet another man. She had smiled at Nathan across the dinner table while planning her next escape. She hadn't just betrayed their marriage, she had exploited it. Nathan rose, refolded the receipt with precise fingers, and placed it carefully back into Celeste's coat pocket. There would be no accusation tonight. No slammed doors, no furious ultimatums. Instead, there would be surveillance, documentation, preparation. He poured himself a glass of Macallan and stepped onto the balcony, the wind off the East River biting at his skin. Below, Manhattan pulsed with life, taxis threading through the streets, skyscrapers burning electric gold against the dusk. Nathan felt the city's hum in his bones, its restless hunger, its ruthless ambition. It mirrored something in him now. Inside, Sophie's bedroom light glowed faintly under her door. Nathan felt a twist deep in his chest, sharp enough to nearly double him over. His daughter, his little girl, with her soft curls and endless questions, her drawings pinned to his office corkboard, her laugh like sunlight in their too quiet home. No, this wasn't just about Celeste. This was about protecting Sophie, about protecting the Hale name Nathan had spent his entire adult life building. It was about ensuring that when this was over, the person left standing would be the one who deserved to. Nathan set his glass down on the balcony ledge, the amber liquid catching the last slant of light. Nathan, inwardly. She thinks she's winning. She thinks she's clever. She doesn't know yet. I am so much better at this game than she is. That night, Nathan didn't confront Celeste. He slipped into bed beside her, felt the soft weight of her body as she curled toward him in sleep, breathing slow, unaware. And as he lay there, eyes open in the dark, Nathan Hale decided he wasn't just going to catch his wife, he was going to dismantle her. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. Nathan Hale had always been the kind of man who understood timing. In business, in negotiations, even in family life, when to step forward, when to hold back, when to strike. But nothing in his 42 years had prepared him for the quiet war he was now waging inside his own marriage. By the time Luca Serrano arrived at his penthouse office, Nathan was already 3 days into a slow burn of sleeplessness. He hadn't told Celeste. She floated through their home like nothing had changed, kissing him on the cheek, texting constantly, leaving half-empty wine glasses on the marble countertops. He watched her closely now, like a man assessing the architecture of a building he planned to tear down. Luca sat across from him, his black leather notebook open, silver pen ready. "I'll be blunt," Nathan said, voice even. "I want full surveillance. Financial, personal, digital. If she so much as blinks wrong, I want to know about it." Luca nodded without flinching. Ex-FBI, mid-40s, quietly lethal in his efficiency, he was the man Manhattan's wealthiest families called when they needed problems solved, quietly. She's seeing someone, Nathan added, meeting Luca's eyes. But it's not just the affair. There's money, movement I didn't authorize. Start there. Luca gave one short nod, closed his notebook, and left without ceremony. Nathan exhaled, pressing his hands flat against the cool glass of his desk. That night, he watched Celeste prepare for yet another dinner meeting. She wore the black dress he had bought her last year, clingy silk, delicate straps, a dress she had once claimed was too much for their anniversary dinner. Nathan leaned against the bedroom door frame as she adjusted an earring. "Late night again?" he asked softly. She turned, smiling with practiced weariness. "You know how these things go." "Yes," he thought. "Yes, I do." For a moment, he wanted to reach out, to touch her, to ask her if she remembered who they used to be. But he stayed where he was, arms crossed loosely, watching her pull on a coat and grab her clutch, moving through the life they had built like it was a rented set. When the door shut behind her, Nathan sat in the dark for a long time. 1 week later, Luca returned. Nathan sat in his private study, Sophie's crayon drawings pinned behind him, the edges curling slightly. Luca spread out photos on the table, Celeste at the Baccarat Hotel, laughing with a tall, dark-haired man. Same man at Cipriani, hand on her lower back. Same man outside her boutique, sunglasses pushed back into his hair as he kissed her cheek. "Julian Astor," Luca said. "VP at Crestline Capital. Comes from old money, but his fund's bleeding cash. Word is, he's flashy, aggressive, and up to his neck in debt." Nathan stared at the images, his face giving away nothing. The man was younger, charming. The kind of man who thrived on taking things that didn't belong to him. "How long?" Nathan asked. 6 months, Luca said. "They're careful, but not that careful. She books under different names, but same patterns. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Baccarat Hotel, Suite 1703. Nathan felt a low, tight ache in his chest. Not heartbreak. Something worse. The ache of a man cataloging the evidence of his own stupidity. "And the money?" he asked quietly. "That's where it gets interesting." The next day, Nathan sat across from Anya Patel, forensic accountant. Sharp, meticulous, calm. The kind of woman who saw financial patterns like other people saw colors. "She's been siphoning funds," Anya said bluntly. "About 2.1 million, rerouted through boutique expenses, then moved to a Crestline Capital investment vehicle. It's not just personal, it's strategic. She's funding him." Nathan felt something inside him harden. "She's investing in him," he murmured. "Worse," Anya said, sliding a tablet across the table. "He's moving part of it offshore." Nathan froze. The screen showed transactions routed to an account in Paris, flagged under the name Gabrielle Marchand. "Who the hell is that?" Nathan asked. Luca, leaning forward, spoke for the first time. "Gabrielle Marchand, art dealer, Paris-based, known associate of Julian, and not in a business sense." The room went very still. Nathan's jaw tightened. "You're telling me," he exhaled sharply. "She's not just cheating on me, she's being used." Anya nodded, her expression tight. "She thinks she's seducing Julian," she said quietly. "But Julian's playing her, and part of that money is going to Marchand." Nathan let the silence stretch, his thoughts flicking through every encounter, every smile, every lie. He felt the ground shift under him, not just personal betrayal, but professional, financial, reputational. "She thinks she's in control," he said, almost to himself. "She has no idea." That night, Nathan didn't sleep. He sat in his office, the city spread out before him like a lit-up map, his daughter's quiet breathing carrying through the apartment. The anger came in waves, sharp, clean, but underneath it, something more dangerous: clarity. He poured himself a drink, untouched, and pulled up Celeste's Instagram. There she was, smiling at a gala, laughing on a yacht, toasting cocktails with names he didn't recognize. He wondered if she even remembered what they had been working for once. He wondered if, deep down, she knew she was standing on a floor that was about to crack. When Celeste came home, she smelled like expensive perfume and champagne. Nathan watched her from the hallway as she hung up her coat, her face glowing with late-night triumph, her eyes still shining from whatever compliments Julian had poured into her. She looked beautiful, radiant even, and for a split second, Nathan almost believed the lie she was living. But then Sophie stirred in her room, whimpering softly in her sleep, and Nathan turned away. In the days that followed, Luca's updates arrived like clockwork. Julian and Gabriel weren't just casual, they were intimate. There were photos, messages, video clips. Paris, New York, the Amalfi Coast. Gabriel, slim, striking, always at Julian's side, or in his bed. Nathan didn't flinch. He watched, learned, calculated. When Luca asked if he wanted to confront Celeste, Nathan shook his head. "No," he said softly. "Not yet." He wanted her overconfident. He wanted Julian cocky. He wanted Gabriel in the picture. And then, when the moment was right, he would break them so thoroughly they wouldn't remember what it felt like to win. Nathan stood by Sophie's bed that night, brushing a curl from her forehead as she slept. She was the only thing that mattered now, the only piece of this mess worth saving. He leaned down, kissed her hair, and whispered, "I'm going to fix this. For you." The last puzzle piece fell into place a week later. Anya handed Nathan a slim folder. Inside, wire transfers, account numbers, email printouts. "This is it," she said. "We can freeze everything." Nathan exhaled, slow and deep, feeling the cold burn of inevitability in his veins. He met Luca's eyes. "Tell Evelyn Crow I want to meet," Nathan said, his voice low, measured, unshakable. "It's time to end this." As he walked to the balcony, the city stretched below him, restless and glittering. He watched the cars move like tiny currents, the buildings rise like monoliths. Somewhere out there, Celeste was laughing over drinks. Julian was plotting his escape. Gabriel was toasting to Julian's success. Nathan finished his drink in one clean swallow. They had no idea. They would. And when they did, it would be too late. Nathan Hale sat in Evelyn Crow's office, his jaw set, his fingers laced tightly together. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, but neither of them glanced at the view. Evelyn was a legend in Manhattan divorce circles, known for delivering quiet, thorough destruction to anyone foolish enough to underestimate her clients. Her blonde hair was pulled into a sharp knot, her navy suit flawless, her hands moving efficiently as she flipped through the folder Nathan had handed her. Photos, financial records, wire transfers, private messages, hotel bookings, evidence of Julian Astor, evidence of Celeste Hale's financial misconduct, evidence that could gut an entire empire. Evelyn let out a low, approving hum. "This is excellent work, Nathan. I've seen people come to me with suspicions, sometimes with gossip. But you—" She looked up, smiling like a wolf. "You've brought me a fully loaded arsenal." Nathan didn't smile. He felt hollowed out. 3 weeks of surveillance reports, financial breakdowns, late-night updates from Luca Serrano, and cold, hard proof from Anya Patel, all of it culminating here, on this sleek marble table. "What's our strategy?" Nathan asked, his voice even. Evelyn leaned back, fingers tapping thoughtfully. "First, asset protection. We quietly shift anything you want preserved into individual accounts. Trusts, properties, business holdings. We document every marital expenditure Celeste has touched, especially those rerouted to Astor. We'll hit her with marital fraud,
financial misconduct, and adultery. That gives us grounds to go after sole custody of Sophie. Nathan inhaled slowly, eyes focused on a point just over Evelyn's shoulder. Sophie. That was the piece he could not, would not, lose. "And Julian?" he asked. Evelyn gave a dry laugh. "He won't know what hit him. Once his father finds out he's been siphoning money and is tied to a public scandal, Astor Capital will cut him loose. And when the SEC gets wind of the offshore transactions to this," she flipped a page, "Gabriel Marchand, things will get very ugly, very fast." Nathan's mouth tightened at the mention of Gabriel. The art dealer had surfaced like a ghost, a face in Parisian tabloids, a whisper in Julian's emails. It was the detail that had tipped the entire betrayal from ordinary into grotesque. Evelyn's voice softened. "You've been calm this whole time. That's rare." Nathan met her gaze steadily. "I stopped being angry a while ago. Now I just want it done right." Across the city, Julian Astor lounged at the Amman Hotel bar, unaware that the clock was ticking down on his charmed life. He was tall, lean, designer-dressed, confident in the way only a man accustomed to winning could be. Beside him, Celeste Hale sipped her champagne, laughing at something clever he'd just murmured in her ear. She was luminous tonight, perfect skin, the black dress that clung in all the right places, her hair swept up to reveal the delicate diamond studs Nathan had given her on their 10th anniversary. "Darling, you're distracted," Julian teased, brushing his fingers along her bare shoulder. "Just thinking about everything we're building," Celeste murmured, tilting her glass toward his. "You know, for the future." Julian smiled, and somewhere deep inside, Celeste felt a flicker of victory. This was what she deserved. Passion, excitement, someone who saw her, wanted her, made her feel alive again. What she didn't know, what she would never have guessed, was that Julian had another future entirely in mind, one that had nothing to do with her. 2 days later, Luca sat in Nathan's office, sliding a flash drive across the desk. "Final pull from the offshore accounts," Luca said. "Confirmed. Funds Celeste transferred to Julian's hedge fund were rerouted to a personal account under Gabriel Marchand. Flights, hotels, luxury goods, the whole 9 yards. Nathan clenched his jaw. "And Celeste?" "Clueless," Luca said simply. "She thinks she's funding Julian's next big move. She has no idea he's planning an exit." Nathan ran a hand over his face. He wasn't sure what felt worse, the betrayal itself or the sheer stupidity of it. Celeste, once so sharp, had been blindfolded by her own greed and desire. "And Marchand?" Nathan asked. "Impatient," Luca said, a faint smirk crossing his face. "Apparently Julian's been promising they'll go public, move to Europe, start over, as soon as he wraps things up in New York. But Marchand's tired of waiting." Nathan's eyes sharpened. "How tired?" "Enough to leak," Luca said, eyes glinting. "I've been monitoring communications. Marchand's been flirting with a Vanity Fair journalist. I'd say we're days away from a very public bombshell." Nathan leaned back slowly, the pieces clicking into place in his mind. They weren't just destroying themselves. They were handing him the match. At the Hale penthouse, Celeste floated through the rooms like a woman already living another life. Her boutique had been doing well, or so she thought. Deals lined up, influencers courting her, media mentions trickling in. She imagined herself reinvented, no longer just Nathan Hale's wife, but Celeste Hale, brand founder, tastemaker, powerful in her own right. She never noticed the subtle changes. The business account freezes, the slight delays in wire transfers, the silence from certain vendors, all things Evelyn Crow's legal team had orchestrated quietly, efficiently, under Nathan's instruction. One night, as Celeste slipped into bed beside Nathan, She kissed his cheek absently, murmuring, "You're so good to me," before rolling over and falling asleep. Nathan lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. Good. He was very, very good. The Met Gala arrived like a storm, glittering and loud, the city's elite pouring into the Metropolitan Museum under a blaze of cameras and flashes. Nathan and Celeste stepped onto the carpet, the picture of perfection, her arm draped over his, smiles polished, angles flawless. Inside, Nathan moved like a man playing chess 3 moves ahead. He sipped champagne, made polite conversation, all while texts from Luca and Anya came in discreetly to his phone. Anya, asset freeze finalized, boutique accounts locked. Luca, Marchand leak confirmed, Vanity Fair running exclusive tomorrow. Across the room, Celeste sparkled. She laughed, charmed, posed, her face alight with triumph. Nathan watched her, his expression calm, almost fond. She had no idea that her empire had already fallen. That night, as Celeste slept beside him, Nathan stood at the window, looking out over Manhattan. His phone vibrated once. Luca, Julian and Marchand, Amman Hotel. Together now. Nathan's lips thinned. The final piece was in place. He turned, looked at the woman in his bed, the woman who had gambled everything, her marriage, her daughter, her name, for the thrill of something newer, younger, riskier. Tomorrow, she would wake up and everything she thought she owned would be gone. Nathan had waited. He had planned. He had moved every piece into position. Now, it was time to strike. Across town, in a suite at the Amman Hotel, Julian Astor raised a glass to Gabriel Marchand. "To us," Julian murmured, his voice low, his smile confident. Gabriel smiled back, but there was an edge to it now. The edge of a man who was done waiting, done hiding, done being the secret. Julian didn't know it yet, but in the morning, his name would be splashed across headlines from New York to Paris, and the man who had played 2 lives so carelessly was about to watch both of them collapse. Nathan returned to bed just before dawn, sliding under the covers as Celeste stirred faintly in her sleep. For a moment, just one, he let himself feel it. The weight of the years, the memories, the daughter down the hall. Then he shut it down. Tomorrow, he would end it. Completely. And when it was over, there would be no screaming, no public scene, no messy scandal on his side. Just the clean, cold satisfaction of precision. The kind of satisfaction only a man like Nathan Hale could understand. Celeste Hale had always believed she could handle anything. That was part of her charm, wasn't it? The way she slipped through Manhattan society with a laugh and a tilt of her head, balancing social invites, boutique launches, charity committees, and yes, occasional working late excuses. She was elegant, magnetic, and practiced at keeping control. But as she stepped out of the car at the Met Gala that night, wrapped in a midnight blue gown, Julian Astor on speed dial, Nathan's warm, steady arm at her side, something flickered at the edge of her world. Her phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times. She silenced it. Inside, the museum glittered with champagne towers and camera flashes. Celebrities mingled with hedge fund magnates, artists, and legacy names. Celeste moved through the crowd, cheeks glowing, feeling the usual thrill of importance. Nathan stayed close, smiling for the cameras, his hand at her waist, his voice smooth as ever when he leaned in and whispered, "You're the star tonight." She laughed softly, squeezing his hand. Yes, she was. But as the night went on, the flicker became a tremor. Her phone, left in her evening clutch, wouldn't stop vibrating. Her social media notifications were exploding, threads of messages climbing in unread lines. A friend leaned in close over dessert, voice careful. Celeste, have you seen the news? Celeste's stomach dipped. What news? Her friend hesitated, glancing at Nathan, then gave a small, almost pitying smile. You might want to check. At the same time, across the city, Julian Astor was watching his world go up in smoke. It started with a tip-off to Vanity Fair, an anonymous source with photographs, financial documents, screenshots, messages, and within hours, the article hit. Julian Astor, Manhattan's hedge fund prince and his secret life. Gabriel Marchand had decided he was done waiting. The exposé detailed not only Julian's affair with Celeste Hale, but his long-term closeted relationship with Gabriel, his financial misconduct, and, most damning of all, the millions funneled from Hale family accounts through his failing hedge fund to cover his debts and fund luxury vacations with Gabriel. By morning, Julian's phone had blown up with calls. His father, his investors, the board of Astor Capital. By noon, his office door was shut, his name removed from the company directory. And by evening, Gabriel Marchand, art world darling, was basking in media praise as the brave lover who exposed Manhattan's dirtiest secret. Celeste's hands shook as she locked herself in a Met Gala powder room, scrolling furiously through her phone. She saw her own face, smiling beside Julian in paparazzi shots, overlaid with headlines. She saw comments, some pitying, some mocking. She saw Nathan's name attached to hers, her boutique's name, their family's name, and suddenly the room spun. When she stepped back out, Nathan was waiting. He was calm, composed, hands in his pockets. His eyes searched her face once, registering everything. The panic, the cracks, the desperation. Everything all right? He asked softly. Celeste opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She shook her head faintly. Nathan smiled gently. Don't worry, love, he murmured. It's almost over. The next morning, Celeste rushed to her boutique. The doors were locked. She rattled the handle, called the manager, the accountant, the PR lead. No one answered. Emails bounced. Vendors pulled out. Brand partners ghosted. Her personal assistant texted, carefully, Per our lawyer, your accounts have been frozen. Please refer inquiries to legal. Celeste felt her throat close. The boutique she'd built, the social empire she'd crafted, gone in a blink. She drove to the penthouse, heart hammering, hoping, praying Nathan would be away at work. But when she stepped inside, there he was. He stood in the living room, Sophie's backpack slung over his shoulder, dressed in dark jeans and a simple gray sweater, his face quiet and unreadable. Sophie came running to her. Mommy! Celeste dropped to her knees, hugging her daughter tight, the smell of her shampoo hitting her like a punch. Nathan watched, hands resting lightly on Sophie's shoulders. We're heading to school, he said softly. We can talk when I'm back. Celeste's mouth opened, but Nathan was already guiding Sophie toward the door. Be good, sweetheart, he told Sophie, kissing her head. Then, to Celeste, he added quietly, Get some rest. The door closed behind them. Celeste crumpled to the floor. Meanwhile, Julian was drowning. His father, Robert Astor, chairman of Astor Capital, issued a public statement that afternoon. We are dismayed by recent revelations and are taking immediate steps to separate our firm from Julian Astor's personal misconduct. Investors bailed. The board demanded his resignation, and the SEC, tipped off by Evelyn Crow's legal team, launched an investigation into offshore accounts. Julian paced his penthouse, half-dressed, glass in hand, calls going to voicemail. Gabriel had cut off contact. Celeste was imploding publicly. And Nathan Hale. Nathan was nowhere to be found. Julian sank into the nearest chair, head in his hands, the weight of it hitting all at once. For the first time in his charmed life, there was no one left to call. That evening, Celeste sat in the penthouse kitchen, nursing a glass of wine, when Nathan returned. He set his keys down, loosened his coat, and sat across from her at the table. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Nathan exhaled. "It's over, Celeste." Her eyes filled with sudden, desperate tears. "Nathan, please," she whispered, reaching for his hand. I was lost. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." Nathan's mouth curved faintly, but his eyes were steady, cool. "No," he said softly. "We can't." He pushed a folder across the table. Inside, the divorce papers, fault-based, asset freezes, custody filings. Celeste's breath hitched. You can't do this!" Nathan tilted his head. "You already did." As Celeste sobbed in the penthouse kitchen, Julian watched his own world disintegrate. He tried calling her, no answer. He tried texting Gabriel, blocked. He tried reaching out to his father, assistant screening his calls. He paced his penthouse, drinking, panicking, until the knock came at the door. Papers, lawsuits, federal inquiries. His empire, burned to the ground, not by Nathan, not even by Celeste, but by his own hand. Back at the Hale home, Nathan tucked Sophie into bed, brushing a curl from her forehead. "Daddy?" she murmured sleepily. "Is Mommy okay?" Nathan's chest tightened, but he smiled softly. "She'll be all right," he whispered. "We all will." He kissed her cheek, turned out the light, and stood in the hallway for a long, quiet moment. Tomorrow, the headlines would spread further. Tomorrow, Celeste would pack her things. Tomorrow, Julian's name would make the evening news. But tonight, Nathan Hale stood in his home, his daughter safe, his life reclaimed, his heart steady. He had waited. He had planned. And now, it was over. Completely. Nathan Hale stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored black suit, the same one Celeste had once called devastatingly handsome, at a charity gala years ago. Tonight, he wasn't wearing it for her. He wasn't wearing it for Julian Astor. He wasn't even wearing it for the headlines that would ripple across Manhattan by sunrise. He was wearing it because today marked the last day of pretending. The man who stared back at him wasn't the trusting husband he had been 6 months ago. That man had been naive, distracted, sure that hard work, stability, and patience were enough to keep a marriage safe. The man tightening his cufflinks now was coldly resolved, sharpened by betrayal, and ready to bring the house down. On the dresser sat the manila folder, 73 pages of legal firepower. Divorce papers, fault-based, asset seizure requests, custody petitions, fraud documentation, federal referrals, everything Evelyn Crow and her team had assembled with brutal precision. He picked it up, weighed it briefly in his hands, and then walked out the door. The Baccarat Hotel's lobby was exactly as he remembered it from past events. Marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers, the hush of money in the air, staff moving like dancers trained in discretion. He arrived 2 hours before Celeste and Julian's usual check-in time, taking a seat in the corner lounge where he ordered a Macallan neat. He watched the elevators. At 7:43 p.m., Julian entered first, alone, tall and polished, exuding casual arrogance. Nathan's eyes flicked over him with detached assessment. Expensive watch, designer coat, slight smirk, the look of a man who had never faced consequences. At 7:51 p.m., Celeste arrived. She wore the black silk dress Nathan had given her last anniversary, the one she'd claimed was too formal for anywhere they went. Her hair was swept up. Her perfume trailed faintly as she moved toward the elevators, heels clicking confidently. Nathan watched her tip her face up, smiling at something Julian murmured as he reached to press the button, his hand slipping instinctively to the small of her back. He didn't feel rage. He didn't feel heartbreak. He felt ready. At 8:20 p.m., Nathan rode the elevator to the 8th floor, manila folder in hand. He walked down the hallway, hearing muffled laughter from suite 847. the familiar, unguarded sound of people who believed themselves untouchable. He knocked. Firm, professional. There was a pause. A shuffle. Then the door cracked open, the security chain holding it just a few inches wide. Celeste's face appeared. Her eyes flicked from curiosity to confusion to horror in the space of a heartbeat.
"Nathan," she began, voice strangled. Behind her, Julian's voice floated lazily. "Who is it, babe?" Nathan smiled faintly, lifting the folder. "We need to talk." The door closed sharply, chain rattling, bolts turning. Seconds later, it swung open fully. Celeste stood in the doorway, barefoot, robe loosely tied over her dress, skin still flushed from champagne and stolen hours. Julian hovered just behind her, shirt unbuttoned, eyes wide now, every ounce of smugness drained away. "Nathan," Julian started, voice rising defensively. "Look, No need," Nathan interrupted calmly, holding up the folder and handing it to Celeste with cool precision. "Everything's explained in here." Celeste's fingers trembled as she took it, flipping open the first page. Divorce papers, followed by asset freeze orders, followed by custody petitions, followed by documented evidence of marital fraud, followed by Evelyn Crow's notarized affidavit. Behind her, Julian paled visibly.
"And you," Nathan said, turning to Julian, voice conversational, almost gentle, "will want your own attorney. The SEC is eager to meet you." For a moment, none of them spoke. Julian's mouth opened once, then closed. Celeste made a small broken sound in her throat, one hand rising instinctively to her chest. Nathan took a step back. "I'll leave you to it," he said softly. Then, turning without another word, he walked down the hall. The media storm hit by morning. Headlines blared across every finance blog and social media feed. Julian Astor resigns amid financial scandal. Celeste Hale, Manhattan it girls fall from grace. Insider speaks. Lover Gabriel Marchand breaks silence on double life. Julian's hedge fund collapsed in under 48 hours. His father, Robert Astor, issued a press release publicly severing all family ties, calling Julian's actions a betrayal of trust and a stain on the Astor legacy. Investors fled. Federal investigators moved in. Gabriel Marchand, meanwhile, became the media darling of the art world, cashing in on tell-all interviews and exclusive features. Julian was left alone in his penthouse, curtains drawn, phone dark, reputation incinerated. Celeste fared no better. Within a week, her boutique shuttered, accounts frozen, her social calendar cleared, invitations revoked. Friends stopped calling, sponsors pulled out. The Hale family lawyers, acting under Nathan's instructions, finalized the custody agreement. Nathan as sole guardian, Celeste permitted supervised visitation pending further review. When Celeste tried to reach out, Nathan met her only once, at the penthouse, with Evelyn present. "I was lost," she whispered, eyes glassy. "Nathan, you have to believe me. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Nathan regarded her steadily, his face unreadable. "I believe you," he said quietly. "You didn't mean for it to go this far, but you did." Her shoulders sagged. He rose, collecting his coat. "Sophie and I will be at the family house upstate," he added. "You have until the end of the month to vacate." Celeste flinched as if struck. Nathan hesitated just briefly, then said more softly, "Take care of yourself, Celeste." And then he was gone. Across the city, Julian sat in darkness, liquor glass in hand, television muted, watching his own name scroll across the news ticker. He had tried calling Gabriel, blocked. He had tried reaching Celeste, voicemail. He had tried calling his father's assistant, no answer. He had never known until now how fast power vanished. He had thought he was the one playing everyone. He had thought wrong. Nathan sat in his study that night, watching the fire crackle in the hearth. Sophie was asleep upstairs, curled under her favorite blanket, the one she had insisted on bringing to the country house. For the first time in months, Nathan let himself exhale. Not with triumph, not with gloating, just with relief. He had not won back his old life, but he had cleared the wreckage, and in the quiet that remained, there was room to rebuild. Evelyn called him the next morning. "It's all moving as planned," she said crisply. "Celeste's counsel has signaled they won't contest the divorce terms. Julian's facing multiple charges. Gabriel is untouchable. He sold his side of the story first. You're clean, Nathan. Completely." Nathan thanked her, set down the phone, and stared out the window. In the garden, Sophie ran laughing through the snow-dusted grass, her arms stretched wide, her boots kicking up tiny flurries. Nathan felt something stir in his chest, a crack of warmth, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning. He stepped outside, pulling his coat tighter, and watched his daughter turn toward him, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. For the first time in a long time, Nathan Hale smiled, and this time, it reached his eyes. Celeste Hale sat alone in the boutique she once called her empire. The lights were dimmed, the mannequins bare, the racks empty. Only a faint floral scent lingered. One she had commissioned herself to infuse the space, meant to remind customers of elegance, exclusivity, and power. Now, it was just a ghost hanging in the air. She scrolled through her phone for the 100th time. No texts, no calls, no lifelines. Her lawyer had called that morning, voice clipped and professional. "It's finalized, Celeste. You'll receive 15% of the joint assets, no spousal support, and you have 30 days to vacate the penthouse." Her throat had closed on the word 15. She wanted to scream, to demand, to threaten, but there was no one left to scream at. She tried calling Julian again, straight to voicemail. She tried Gabriel, only to realize his number had been disconnected. When she reached Nathan, his assistant answered, polite and cool. "Mr. Hale is unavailable. Please direct any further communication through counsel." Celeste's hand tightened around her phone until her knuckles whitened. She wasn't just losing her marriage, she was losing her identity. Across town, Nathan sat in Evelyn Crow's office, Sophie playing quietly with a coloring book in the corner. Evelyn's summary was simple. Full custody granted. All financial recovery actions secured. Media exposure managed. Nathan had emerged clean, focused, and surprisingly sympathetic. "You came out of this better than anyone I've seen in years," Evelyn said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You kept your dignity, you protected your daughter, and you watched them burn themselves to the ground." Nathan gave a small, tired smile. "I didn't want them to burn." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "No?" He shook his head, looking toward Sophie. "I just wanted Sophie to be safe." Julian Astor, meanwhile, sat alone in his penthouse, watching his own name scroll across financial news tickers. He had tried damage control, calls to old connections, pleas to his father, quiet outreach to Gabriel. But the bridges were gone. Burned. Disintegrated. Gabriel's exclusive with Vanity Fair had landed like a bomb. Photos, bank records, private messages, and a glossy confession of betrayal, painting Julian as the careless, callous manipulator who had left 2 lives in ruins. Gabriel had emerged as a sympathetic figure. Julian had emerged as a public disgrace. Julian poured himself another drink, staring into the glass like it might offer him a lifeline. It didn't. Nathan watched it all unfold from a quiet distance. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. One morning, as he sat at the kitchen table reading with Sophie, Celeste showed up unannounced. She looked like she hadn't slept. Oversized sunglasses, tousled hair, an expensive coat pulled tightly around her. "Nathan," she began, voice hoarse. Please. He rose, quietly guiding Sophie to her room before returning to face her. She pulled off her sunglasses. I made mistakes, she whispered. I was lonely, angry. I lost myself. But we can fix this. We can try. Nathan exhaled, folding his arms. Celeste, you didn't just cheat, he said softly. You dismantled everything. You used our family. You gambled with our daughter's future. Her face crumpled. I love you, she whispered. He held her gaze, steady and unflinching. No, Celeste, he said quietly. You loved what I gave you. She staggered back, breath hitching, and for the first time, Nathan felt nothing but release. The days after were a quiet recalibration. Celeste moved out of the penthouse, slipping from headlines as quickly as she had entered them. Manhattan's social circle, once eager to praise her, moved on, chasing new names, new scandals, new distractions. Julian disappeared from public view entirely. His father's firm issued a final statement, severing all ties, and the last sighting of him was a grainy photo in the back pages of a tabloid, unshaven, leaving his penthouse under cover of night. Gabriel, meanwhile, flourished, his art shows packed, his profile raised, the media eager to anoint him the survivor of the year's most lurid scandal. Nathan watched it all from a quiet place of distance. His only focus now was Sophie. One evening, as they sat together at the country house, Sophie curled up beside him, her small hand clutching his. Daddy? Yes, sweetheart. Are we okay now? Nathan felt his throat tighten. He kissed her forehead softly. We are now. Later that night, Nathan sat alone on the porch, a glass of whiskey resting beside him, the cool evening air brushing against his skin. His phone buzzed. A message from Victoria Chen, the woman he'd quietly, carefully, been growing closer to over the past few months. Thinking of you. Hope Sophie's well. Let's have coffee soon. No rush. Just whenever you're ready. Nathan smiled faintly, fingers hovering over the reply before setting the phone down. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt something that wasn't anger or grief or exhaustion. He felt peace. In the weeks that followed, Nathan focused on what mattered. Mornings making pancakes with Sophie, walks in the park, quiet evenings, reading, laughing, being present. There was no rush, no performance, no games, just life as it was, simple and steady. And Nathan, reborn not as the man who had lost everything, but as the man who had fought, survived, and reclaimed it. Meanwhile, across the city, Celeste packed the last of her belongings into the back of a car, pausing briefly to glance up at the penthouse she had once ruled. There was no one to see her off, no reporters, no friends, no Julian, just the quiet, sharp weight of consequences. She climbed into the car, pulled the door shut, and let herself be driven away. In a different apartment, Julian Astor sat alone in a darkened living room, scrolling aimlessly through his phone, watching as his contacts slowly disappeared. The once endless stream of invitations, deals, connections, all gone. He reached for his drink, paused, then set it down, the glass rattling faintly against the marble tabletop. For the first time, he realized he wasn't untouchable. He never had been. Nathan stood by the window that evening, watching Sophie chase fireflies in the garden, her laughter carrying through the open window. Victoria's message blinked again on his phone, waiting, patient. He smiled softly, feeling the ache in his chest loosen just a little. He had been broken, he had been betrayed, but he had not been defeated, not as a man, not as a father, not as Nathan Hale, and that, in the end, was the only victory that mattered. The morning light slipped through the tall windows of Nathan Hale's Upper East Side penthouse, casting pale streaks across the hardwood floors. Nathan stood by the kitchen counter, a mug of black coffee warming his hands, watching the city wake up below. Sophie's laughter floated from the living room as she and Victoria Chen sat cross-legged on the rug, piecing together a puzzle. It had been 6 months. 6 months since the night everything shattered. 6 months since the world saw the headlines, the scandals, the downfall of Celeste Hale and Julian Astor. 6 months since Nathan had walked away, not just from a marriage, but from the man he used to be. And yet, in this quiet morning light, he felt something unfamiliar. He felt whole. Celeste had been gone for months now. After packing the last of her designer clothes and jewelry into moving boxes, she'd left the penthouse under the strained hush of public indifference. The boutique she once poured herself into had closed. The financial settlements had stripped away her lavish life, leaving her with just enough to maintain a modest apartment outside the city. Manhattan's social scene, once a place she owned effortlessly, no longer called her name. Nathan hadn't heard from her since the day she signed the final divorce papers, her hand shaking, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. He hadn't needed to. He had what mattered. Julian Astor had become a lesson. His hedge fund dissolved, his family cut ties, and his public image reduced to a string of cautionary articles about greed, scandal, and arrogance. His phone stopped ringing. His name slipped from high society lips like a bad taste. Nathan never checked on Julian, never followed the gossip after the legal dust settled. There was no need. He knew a man like Julian would destroy himself better than any enemy could. And Gabriel Marchand? He was thriving, riding the wave of his public confessions, showing in art galleries, posing for magazine spreads. But Nathan had no anger left for him. Gabriel had been opportunistic, yes, but in the end, it was Julian who'd handed him the weapon. Victoria placed the final puzzle piece on the table with Sophie, smiling softly. "Done," Sophie cheered, clapping her small hands together. Nathan chuckled under his breath, setting his coffee down. He crossed the room, ruffling his daughter's hair as she beamed up at him. "Good teamwork," he murmured, kissing her forehead. Sophie hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his waist. "We're a good team, Daddy." He swallowed the sudden lump in his throat. "Yeah, sweetheart," he whispered. "We are." Victoria rose quietly, giving them a moment. She had never rushed Nathan, never pushed for more than he was ready to give. She had simply been there, steady, patient, real. For the first time in years, Nathan felt what it meant to stand next to someone without wondering when the floor would drop out from under him. "Coffee?" he asked her gently. She smiled. "Always." As he moved to the kitchen, Nathan caught his reflection in the glass. He barely recognized himself. Not because of any dramatic change, but because of what was gone. The tension in his shoulders, the sharpness around his mouth, the weight in his eyes. He was lighter, not naive, not softened, but lighter. Outside, the city pulsed on, unbothered, unstoppable. New scandals emerged, new names rose and fell. Manhattan didn't pause for anyone, and Nathan didn't need it to. His world was here, in this room, with his daughter laughing, with a woman who understood silence as much as conversation, with the peace of knowing he had weathered the storm and come out not just standing, but standing taller. Celeste, somewhere across the river, sat at a cafe window, stirring her coffee slowly. Her phone sat silent on the table. No new messages, no new plans. Once she had been the kind of woman who owned a room. Now she barely attracted a glance. She thought often of calling Nathan, of asking if there was some sliver of connection left, some way to undo what had been done. But she never pressed the button. She knew the answer. Julian sat in a private club in Europe, surrounded by people pretending not to know his name, nursing a drink he could barely afford. His charm had dulled. His calls went unanswered. His world, once gold-leafed and velvet-lined, was now threadbare. He sometimes wondered if Celeste had been the real casualty. Or maybe they both had been. Either way, Nathan Hale's name was the one neither of them dared to speak. That evening, Nathan stood on the balcony, the soft hum of the city stretching beneath him. Sophie was asleep. Victoria curled up on the couch with a book, her hair falling softly around her face. He breathed in deep. He wasn't the man he had been at the start of this. He was something stronger, something steadier. He had learned that love without respect was emptiness, that trust without accountability was blindness, that survival wasn't just about beating the people who hurt you. It was about becoming the man they could never break. He looked back inside, his chest tight with something clean and sharp. Gratitude. For Sophie. For peace. For himself. He slipped back inside, pulling the door closed against the night, and walked quietly toward the life waiting for him. Not perfect, but his. Betrayal is a quiet teacher. It strips away illusions, peels back the layers we hide beneath, and forces us to face the raw truth of who we are when everything we thought we could count on falls apart. But it's not the betrayal itself that defines a person. It's what comes after. In the aftermath, there is grief, anger, and the hollow ache of what was lost. Yet there is also clarity, a chance to rebuild, not as who we were, but as someone wiser, stronger, and more anchored in what truly matters. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't revenge or public triumph. It's the quiet reclaiming of peace. It's learning that love without respect is an empty echo, that trust must be earned, and that the heart, when bruised, can still mend into something even more resilient. Life does not hand out justice neatly, but in the end, it has a way of returning us to ourselves, changed, tempered, and capable of beginning again. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Until next time, stay strong.